Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Hebrews. We're still in Hebrews chapter 11, today looking at verses 11 and 12. Now, we've been examining the example of Abraham, that great man of faith. And in yesterday's session, we saw that Abraham demonstrated his faith by setting out for a country he did not know, but a country that was promised to be his. Now, today, we look at another demonstration of his faith in his believing that God would give him a child. Notice in verse 11, "And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. And so from this one man, that is Abraham, and he as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the sand on the seashore." God had made a promise to Abraham. He said, "You and Sarah will go to this new land. I'll give it to you as your inheritance. Your descendants will be numerous. They will possess the land." The only problem was, Abraham and Sarah had no children. They had no child. They had no son. But yet God promised that they would have descendants. Yet they're old. Sarah's well past the age when she can bear children. And Abraham is an old man. It's too late for that. And yet God promised. And Abraham believed. Now, we turn back to the book of Genesis, chapter 15. Abraham is in the new land, but he has no children. And he has decided, well, I suppose one of my servants will have to be adopted and become my heir. And that's what he's talking to God about. So in Genesis 15, verse 3, Abraham says, "You've given me no children, so a servant in my household will become my heir." And the word of the Lord came to Abraham, "This man, your servant, he will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood, he will be your heir." Then God took him outside and said, "Look up at the sky, count the stars, if indeed you can count them." And he said to him, "So shall your offspring be." And Abraham believed the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness. Now this verse we know well. Abraham believed God, and it was accounted to him for righteousness. In other words, he was saved by his faith. The Apostle Paul in the book of Romans will quote this verse to tell us how we're saved by faith. As Abraham believed God, so must we. And the example of faith in Genesis 15 is when God said, "You will have offspring. You and Sarah will have a child." Even though you're old and it's too late, as the author of Hebrews says, Abraham, it seemed, was as good as dead in terms of being well past the time when he can father a child. Physically, he and Sarah just cannot have a child. But God said, "I promise you will be." And based on the promise of God, Abraham believed. You see, our faith is based on God's promise. We know God is absolutely reliable. He will do what he says he will do. He will accomplish what he says he will accomplish. When God speaks, when his word comes to us, we can trust it. We can believe God. And when we believe him, we become righteous in him. That is, we are in a right relationship with him. So Abraham stands as a great example of faith. God said, "You and Sarah, though you are old and well past the age what you can expect to have children, I'm going to bring it about. You and Sarah will have a child. Isaac is going to be that child." We know that. Isaac is the child of promise. Abraham believed the word of God. When we believe, we become righteous. That is, through our faith in Jesus, we are brought into a right relationship with God. So here again we see Abraham as this great example of faith. He set out for a land he did not know because God promised, "I will give it to you." And he believed he would have a son, though it seemed impossible physically. But God said, I'll do it. And Abraham believed, and Isaac, of course, is the child of promise. Now, in tomorrow's session, we'll look at the final demonstration of Abraham's faith that he's going to mention to us, and that is when God says, "Offer Isaac as a sacrifice." We'll look at that tomorrow, though. So join us for our next 5-minute Bible study in the book of Hebrews.